Russian dictator Vladimir Putin has not achieved significant success in the war against Ukraine and could lose even more ground due to US intervention. This is reported by the Wall Street Journal. The article notes that last year, Russian forces captured less than 1% of Ukrainian territory. The publication writes that the swift capture of Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro by the US military once again highlighted Russia's military weakness. After all, Maduro was the Kremlin's most important ally. The situation for Putin is further aggravated by the seizure of a Russian oil tanker by the United States, escorted by the Navy. In addition, the enormous budget deficit, which directly affects the Russian population, is putting pressure on the conduct of the war. The Wall Street Journal writes that Putin will not be able to continue the war without the support of the Kremlin's inner circle.
This support could be undermined if the US provides Ukraine with the weapons needed to counter Russian drones and missiles. Therefore, colleagues weary of the war and close oligarchs may well put pressure on Putin to bring him to the negotiating table with a peace plan that Ukraine could accept.
Meanwhile, the United Kingdom is stepping up its support for Ukraine. As The Sun reports, London has announced its intention to create a new powerful ballistic missile for Ukraine to destroy Russian targets deep behind enemy lines. We are talking about Nightfall missiles, which will be capable of carrying 200-kilogram warheads and will have a range of almost 500 kilometers, enough to strike Moscow from the battlefield, The Sun writes. The article notes that the intention to manufacture missiles for Ukraine was confirmed by the UK Defence Secretary John Gilly. The country is currently looking for companies to design, develop and supply the first 3 missiles for test launches.
Against the backdrop of protests in Iran, the heir to the Iranian throne, Reza Pahlavi, announced the beginning of a new phase of the national uprising aimed at overthrowing the regime of the Islamic Republic. On his page on the social network X, he stated that the Iranian people have shaken the foundations of the illegitimate Islamic Republic through mass demonstrations across the country.
Now I am announcing the start of a new phase of the national uprising with the goal of overthrowing the Islamic Republic and restoring our beloved Iran.
Pahlavi called all institutions responsible for regime propaganda and the shutdown of communications legitimate targets. He also appealed to members of the security forces, urging them to side with the people and stop killing civilians. According to him, the increase in the number of peaceful demonstrators killed by security forces shows the regime's fear of its impending end. In addition, Pahlavi called for the seizure of Iranian diplomatic institutions abroad. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump stated that Iranian leaders have contacted Washington for negotiations. He noted that a meeting with representatives of the Iranian authorities is currently being prepared. At the same time, Trump added that the United States might have to act even before the meeting takes place. According to the American leader, the military is studying the situation and considering several very tough options. Notably, while protests are taking place in Iran, large-scale naval exercises are being held in South Africa with the participation of BRICS partner ships, China, Russia, and Iran. Meanwhile, Bloomberg has written about possible scenarios for the development of events in Iran. According to the journalists, there are 3 possible outcomes of the protests. The first is a military coup by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The second is the disintegration of the country. And the third is chaos similar to the Arab Spring.
The UK government is in talks with its European allies about deploying military forces in Greenland. According to The Telegraph, British military leadership is developing a plan to send a possible NATO mission to Greenland, which the US president previously wanted to take full control of, citing security concerns. It is noted that British officials have already met with their counterparts from Germany and France. The plan may involve deploying British soldiers, warships and aircraft to protect Greenland from Russia and China, concerns previously raised by Trump. European leaders hope that a significant increase in their presence in the Arctic will persuade Trump to abandon his ambitions to take full control of the strategic island. For his part, US President Donald Trump is not giving up on his desire to seize Greenland. In an interview with journalists, he made a skeptical remark about the island's defense.
Do you know what their defense consists of? 2 dog sleds and all around, Russian and Chinese destroyers and submarines everywhere.
Trump stated that if the US doesn't take Greenland, then Russia or China will. He said he would not allow that to happen. The American leader emphasized one way or another Greenland will be ours. Meanwhile, in Northern Europe, they deny the presence of Chinese and Russian ships near Greenland. This was reported by the Financial Times, citing two unnamed high-ranking Northern European diplomats. It is noted that in recent years there have been no signs of Russian or Chinese vessels near Greenland.
Ukraine and Moldova have completely blocked all supply routes to the Russian contingent in Transnistria as of midnight on January 1st, according to reporting from Ukraine and Euromaidan Press. According to the publication, Ukraine has tightened control along the entire border, while Moldova has expanded its system of checkpoints and mobile patrols. The airspace is closed and land logistics have been halted. Any movement is only possible with the permission of both sides. As the publication notes, about 1,500 Russian soldiers stationed in the region have been cut off from fuel, ammunition, and regular supplies. Previously, a significant portion of logistics was conducted through informal channels, but now these routes have been eliminated. The region has no access to the sea, and air transport is impossible due to Chisinau's control. According to Euromaidan Press, the goal of the blockade is to isolate the Russian military presence without the use of force and gradually deprive Moscow of its levers of influence in the region. Russia has virtually no real means left to support the group without directly violating the borders of Ukraine or Moldova, which would automatically draw international attention. Previously, the former head of Ukraine's main intelligence directorate and current head of the Office of the President of Ukraine, Kirill Budanov, stated that Ukraine has enough forces to radically resolve the Transnistria issue, which remains a source of Russian influence and a potential threat. However, such a solution lies in the realm of complex geopolitics, not just military capabilities. Despite the victory of pro-European forces in Moldova, Transnistria remains a stronghold of Russian influence, which Moscow has successfully maintained for more than 30 years. Kirill Budanov is skeptical about the decades-long attempts at peaceful reintegration of Transnistria. In his opinion, comparing the strength of Moldova and Russia in this region is still not in Chisinau's favor. Budanov confirmed that even in the absence of a grueling war, Russia maintains control over Transnistria. They maintain their group there, everything is going well for them, stated the head of the president's office. Estonia has banned entry to hundreds of Russian military personnel and militants involved in the war in Ukraine and is calling on other EU countries to create a unified blacklist within the Schengen area. This is being reported by the media. The country considers persons non grata if they are hostile towards Europe, have combat experience, a criminal background, and pose a threat to the country's security. Journalists quote Estonian Minister of the Interior Igor Taro as saying, "Since November 2025, the European Commission has banned the issuance of multiple entry visas to Russians. Instead of a multi-visa, Russian citizens now have to obtain a visa for each trip, usually valid for 1 to 5 days. There is also enhanced screening in effect. The consulate now scrutinizes the purpose of the trip, finances, and travel routes more strictly. The ban on issuing multiple entry visas to Russians is a mandatory decision for all Schengen zone countries. Some Baltic countries and Poland had already tightened their rules before the European Commission's decision, refusing visas to tourists. Recall that in October, the Czech Republic banned entry to Russian diplomats and holders of service passports who do not have accreditation in the country. Subsequently, representatives of European governments also agreed to restrict the travel of Russian diplomats in response to a surge in acts of sabotage, which, according to European intelligence services, are being carried out by spies operating under diplomatic cover. According to the proposed new rules, Russian diplomats will be required to notify the authorities of EU countries they plan to visit, as well as those they will transit through on their way to their destination, at least 24 hours before crossing the border. In addition, as of September 30th, all Czech visa centers in Russia have been closed. This is according to a statement posted on the website of their operating company. The president of Moldova, Sandu, expressed her support for uniting her country with Romania, but stated that the majority of Moldovan citizens are against it, Sandu said in an interview with British journalists.
If we had a referendum, I would vote for unification with Romania.
In her opinion, it will be difficult for Moldova to survive on its own, and Sandu explained her choice by referencing the geopolitical situation around Moldova and in the world as a whole. According to Sandu, for a country like Moldova, it is becoming increasingly difficult to survive, to exist as a democracy and as a sovereign nation.
But as the president of Moldova, I understand that there is no majority that would support unification with Romania. But there is a majority that supports joining the EU, and we are working towards achieving this goal. This is a much more realistic goal that helps us protect our sovereignty.
Let us recall that at the end of September, Romanian far-right forces, following the elections in Moldova, called for the unification of the two countries. At that time, the pro-European party Action and Solidarity of Moldovan President Sandu won the parliamentary elections. A poll conducted by a sociological company from Bucharest showed that almost half of Romanians support unification with Moldova. Thus, 47% of respondents said that the unification of Romania and Moldova should be carried out. 46% were opposed and 7% could not answer. At the same time, 13% of respondents stated that Moldova is Romania's best friend, which is the highest figure in the survey. Next in the ranking of friends are France, the USA, Germany, Italy, and other European countries. The situation in Moldova is not simple. On the one hand, the country is striving to become part of the EU. On the other, it suffers from Russian influence. Moscow supports the separatism of Transnistria and also conducts information operations aimed at disrupting Moldova's European integration and keeping the country within its sphere of influence, which is manifested in supporting pro-Russian forces and opposing the West.